On today's show, the Dallas Mavericks fell to the Phoenix Suns, but are they asking too much of Luka Doncic? He was incredible, but he just wasn't enough. And what can Christian Wood be for this Dallas Mavericks team? We'll talk about that and more on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks.
Mavericks, NBA champions. It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. But the best way you can help us grow the show is to comment anything below. Let us know what's one change you want Jason Kidd to make. I'm sure there are many that you're thinking about right now. There's probably like a list in your head. Just give me one in the comment section. And joining me, if you've ever watched a Dallas Mavericks game, the beginning, the middle, or the end of a Dallas Mavericks game, you've seen this person, Dana Larson from Valley Sports. What you got for me, Dana?
Hey there. I'm jamming to this theme music. I'm usually jamming to it on a run.
You want me to let it ride?
Yeah, let's go.
We'll let it ride a little bit.
I love it. It's so fun to be on with you, Nick. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of the pod. You know that. Isaac knows that. And so this is like a real pleasure and an honor.
Thank you so much. Yeah, when you hosted the preseason game with Isaac and Bobby on Mavs.com, it was the first time I got to see you not just hosting and being able to share takes. And I was like, Dana Larson's got takes. We got to have her on the podcast. And so we invited you on, and here we are. Isaac went on vacation right at the right time.
I know. Isn't that great? After the first game, maybe he had a feeling what was going to happen. He said, I'm out of here for game one.
He needed to get out of Dodge for a little bit.
Yeah.
Christian Wood had a good game, and they lost the game. That's bad for Isaac and
that's tough
right now.
That's really tough for him. Yeah.
So today we're going to get into are the Mavs asking too much about Luka Doncic? Because we've gone over this a couple of years now about how he has carried so much of the load. Can they take any load off of Luka Doncic? The Mavs team has changed a little bit. Jalen Brunson leaves, and now he scores 35 points in the game against the Phoenix Suns, the season opener that they lose. He didn't score for 17 minutes in the third quarter to the fourth quarter, like this drought where he didn't score, and it just felt like that's where they really struggled. Now, Christian Wood stepped up in that. Luka has a 39% usage percentage. Let's just start with the first question. Are the Mavs asking too much of Luka Doncic still, Dana?
Well, you know what I did this morning, despite going to bed really late after that game and the post-game show and getting up way too early to get my kids off to school. I rewatched the fourth quarter of the game this morning, and I wrote, Luka needs help. May not want it, but needs it. The fourth quarter to me was obviously that's where the whole game changed for Phoenix and for the Mavs. And the thing I noticed so much was how the Suns looked so balanced in those final 6-8 minutes. They had an inside game. They had an outside game. They had several different guys contributing. Devin Booker really stepped up. He was finding Ayton inside. They were feasting in the paint, but they also had guys that were draining threes. That was really beautiful offense to watch. Unfortunately for the Mavericks, it became pretty stale. It became a whole lot of Luka ISO. And I think that's, unfortunately, that's where they're going to be right now. Big changes to the team. Yes, the core stayed the same. But the fact is that there was a big loss. We know that. And that's what, this was kind of annoyingly predictable, right?
Yes. Yeah.
You didn't want to have to immediately in the first game be like, Jalen Brunson, what isn't here? Luka didn't have his trusted wingman in crunch time. And I think things bogged down a little bit. They have tons of talent. They may just need time again to work through some of these things. And I think with that being the case, Luka probably takes it upon himself in a game like that. It's starting to, fall to pieces. He, is uber talented, and he just thinks, I can make this shot. I can make this play. And a lot of times he does.
Can.
But it also meant a lot of guys were standing around watching, not involved. It's so much easier to defend when that is the case. So I definitely think there will need to be over time. There's got to be more balance. Luka can't do it all at this pace.
And if you look at just like his shot attempts, he took 23 shots, and you're like, okay, well, Devin Booker took 20 shots. Are the Suns asking too much of Devin Booker? Yeah, well, Luka took 23 shots and went to the free throw line 13 times, right? Like that number to me is what really stands out, and that's where you start seeing, okay, his usage percentage is just way too high for this. 39% is what his usage was in the game last night, and that's what it was in the playoffs. That's what it has been in the playoffs the last couple of years of how much they ask of Luka. And yes, when Luka's on the court, you want him to handle the ball. You want him to have it as much as he does. You want him to be in charge of what happens when the ball is in his hands. But like you said, we saw the direct impact of losing Brunson is you just don't have that one extra guy when the defense is like the Phoenix Suns were playing, which is really good defense. You don't have that one extra guy that can create his own shot. And you saw already the conversation we had all offseason about a third guard and why they needed to bring in that third guard to try and bring a little bit more creation, that they really needed that. Christian Wood did it a little bit. You had, obviously, Spencer Dinwiddie, but Spencer Dinwiddie in foul trouble. I thought that was a big reason why Luka had to do a little bit too much in that game.
Agree. I think the rotations got clunky, too, down the stretch in that fourth quarter, and that made things more difficult. You could see, Christian Wood's on the bench for a long period of time. And then he actually, brings in Dinwiddie, takes out Wood. And for offense, for defense, we heard him talk about that after the game. It feels like at the moment, roles are not quite yet defined. And that is going to, the white hot spotlight is going to bring that to the surface in, clutch time more than any other time. And that was really clear. Kids still trying to figure out what he's got. Guys are still trying to figure out what their role is. And that was so easy, especially from like February on last year. We knew exactly what that meant. And even Brunson could bring the ball up the court and give Luka a minute just to catch his breath, draw the attention somewhere else for a minute. Luka will have to figure out how to trust these guys in their new roles. And that is what, that's going to take time. That's not fun. That doesn't make anybody feel good to lose games like these, or to have some rough stretches, but that you can't just, he and Jalen Brunson didn't have that overnight.
Right.
And so he and Spencer Dinwiddie, he and Christian Wood aren't going to have that overnight either. There's a lot of potential there. But the flow, the way it all ended up last night, it obviously didn't work out.
That trust is such a great point because it did take a while for him and Jalen Brunson. And you have to trust that guy can produce. And honestly, for Luka, a guy that's that talented, like you see this with coaches, like Magic Johnson becomes a coach or Michael Jordan tries to become a coach and they're like, why don't you guys just get it? Like, why don't you just get it like the way that I got it as a player? Because I was just, they're so good. It came so naturally to them. And when you're on the court and you're a Luka Doncic, you're like, why can't you just score? Why can't you just go out there and do like what I do and make Torrey Craig look ridiculous and put him in the spin cycle? And like, why can't you just score as efficiently? And so you want to just do everything yourself. Luka's kind of a control freak at times with that. And so
great point.
Like you have to give up some of that control. And I wonder if can that happen in a year? Like with Spencer Dinwiddie, he played 20 games in the regular season with him, and then he played through 18 games in the playoffs with him. Can that happen with Spencer Dinwiddie in a season? Can he earn that kind of trust?
I think so. I mean, I don't see why not. The reason being, there's a great culture that they've established with this team right now. And that's why Spencer Dinwiddie was so successful coming over mid-season last year. They wanted him. They gave him that love. They told him he was talented. They told him he was needed. Well, he's needed now more than ever. And I think there's a lot of guys around him that will make him feel that way. And I think that they will continue to find the right positions to put him in to have that be successful. I don't think that's something that, we should be too worried about. They may still be looking to do different things as the season goes on, but he's super talented. We saw that. He's super motivated. This is a massive opportunity for him to really show he can do that. But being a compliment to Luka is not easy. I mean, you always think like, oh, it's, playing with Luka just looks like a breeze. It might be easier for a big man. I mean, you just need to learn that chemistry, when to roll, where he's going to put it. Those things might be a little easy. Complimenting Luka, though, when you're playing alongside him in the backcourt, it's an entirely different thing. Spencer obviously looks like he feels better on the court when he's running the show. But Jalen Brunson got the hang of that too. Yeah. So it feels to me a little bit like it's just going to be something that's going to take a little time. They got to keep working through the minutes, the substitutions, those kind of different things. And, if they had won this game last night, there'd be so many different things we'd be talking about. We would be looking at all this in such a different light, right?
Yeah,
and now it takes on a little bit of a negative connotation because you got to be able to win close games in the NBA.
Because Damian Lee hit a leaning shot over Spencer Dinwiddie's long outstretched hand. Like, that's literally why we're talking.
Because Damian Lee had 11 in the fourth quarter, which is unbelievable. Yes.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Coming up, let's talk about Christian Wood. He's got some pretty good odds for sixth man of the year. What can Christian Wood be? We saw a glimpse of it in first game. What can Christian Wood be for this Dallas Mavericks team? But before we do, let me tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline has tons of odds and lines all across sports, baseball, playoffs going on. Too bad the Rangers aren't there. NFL odds, you can bet on the Cowboys. I heard that Dak Prescott's back. I saw the thumb. Dak Prescott seems to be back. And Christian Wood for sixth man of the year. Jordan Poole is number one at plus 250. Christian Wood is plus 300, so he's creeping right up on Jordan Poole. Norman Powell's plus 500. Brogdon's plus 700. Dana, quickly, what would you put some money on Christian Wood for sixth man of the year?
Oh, gosh, yes. After last night, are you kidding? Yeah, I'm betting the house on it.
Putting the house on it. So you can do that at BetOnline. Go check it out. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Dana, we're talking about the Dallas Mavericks season opener, and it was a sad Damian Lee filled fourth quarter where the Mavericks dropped it. But Christian Wood was a real bright spot. We really got to see all that Christian Wood can be. And let's just start here. What did you see from Christian Wood that maybe was different from what we thought he was going to be or what we saw in preseason?
Well, I don't know if there was much that was different to me. I think that, we've always heard, and from what you see through his last couple of years, really talented offensively. I thought seeing kind of the whole repertoire last night was pretty great. I mean, we know he can stretch the floor and hit a step back three, but we also saw some mid-range game turnaround. He even put the ball on the floor, a little drive and spin move. He is a real problem for a defense, obviously, a matchup nightmare. I loved that. And he's active around the rim. He can clean up a mess, offensive rebounds. I mean, you would like to have, honestly, of course, everybody would have probably liked to see him even more out there in that fourth quarter with his work around the rim because things just started to go too much, obviously, towards Phoenix there. I just think that the offense is really exciting there with what he brings. And I'm just curious to see what it's going to take for him to show on the defensive end to, for Jason Kidd to really, he keep using the word trust, but to really earn those minutes and earn that extra time to be out there because there is some exciting potential that the Luka Christian Wood game, I think, is something that we possibly have not ever seen.
There was a lot of talk from different people. I saw Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer as one of them that said Christian Wood is the most talented player Luka's ever played with. And I don't know, maybe that's throwing Kristaps Porzingis under the bus a little bit, but you see it. You just see, like you said, the different things that he can do, hitting those three-point shots. It's just so casual for him to take a three-point shot.
So casual.
That's not normal for a 6'10 guy to be able to do that and to make them at a good clip, right? We saw Kristaps Porzingis take them very casually too, and some of them 35, 40 feet, but he wasn't making them at the clip that Christian Wood is. I saw something interesting in the game. In the third quarter, the Suns go on like a 9-0 run, like early. And Jason Kidd wanted some stability. And instead of putting Christian Wood in like he normally would, he took out JaVale and he put in Maxey. What did you think about that decision from Jason Kidd? Do you think it was an indictment on Christian Wood, or do you think that it was more about Jason Kidd just wanted stability in that lineup, wanted Maxey to be out there instead?
I think that's such a good word. That's the perfect word. It's like, Maxey Kleber's a known commodity.
Right.
You know what you're getting from him, and you know it's going to be solid defensively. So to me, that may make sense. It may not be fun. It's not flashy. It didn't feel good, as the game went on, to see that maybe he wasn't going to get to be out there. I mean, Maxey still brings a lot of important things. And I was surprised. I don't know about you, Nick, but not see JaVale McGee more in this game. He only played 14 minutes.
It was interesting because I was not surprised. I thought that was what his role was going to be, like 15, 17 minutes, something like that. We've never seen him play long stretches of minutes. And I also didn't think he was that great in that game.
Yeah.
It was interesting that Jason Kidd made the decision to play JaVale less because of the way he was playing, but not play Christian Wood more because of how he was playing. Right? I thought that was an interesting difference between the two.
As I'm watching, DeAndre Ayton really get going, and I'm thinking, wasn't this the whole point? We wanted to bolster that interior, make life difficult on the inside, some rim protection. And Maxey does a great job, but he's not 7 foot plus.
Right.
I just wondered if that, just even to disrupt momentarily. There were those moments where you just saw how easily Devin Booker was just a little handoff to Ayton and an easy finish. And I guess I was a little surprised that just not trying to use the size that you made a big point of getting. Yes, I know that there may not be a full confidence in the defensive scheme yet with Christian Wood. And I guess that's where we're at with things right now. But nonetheless, I just thought in a matchup like that, watching the way the points in the paint were
insane,
56-36 Phoenix. And I'm like, that's the stuff we talked a lot about last year, especially once KP was gone and the Mavs were forced to play small. And you were like, well, this is how it's got to be. But there was such a point made to address that I was just a little surprised by that.
Yeah, I found that was a theme all preseason too. They allowed a ton of points in the paint from teams like the Magic, teams like the Jazz, who I guess the Jazz are maybe good now since they beat the Nuggets last night. But that was a theme, and they're still trying to figure out how to play that defense that they play. They run teams off the 3-point line. I think the Suns only took like 22 threes last night. And so they run them off the 3-point line, but then where do they go? They go into the paint, and now they have to figure out those backside rotations and figure out how JaVale McGee can be a good rim protector. And I just didn't think he did a great job as a rim protector. And that's the stuff that's going to take time and take time for Christian Wood to figure out too. It's interesting you brought up Ayton when we're talking about Christian Wood, because I saw a big difference. Ayton was disgruntled all offseason, apparently didn't talk to his coach all offseason. We've known in the past that he wants a bigger role, wants to score more, wants to have the ball in his hands more. And he was going off a little bit, but it was off of those like dump passes. He was 8 of 11 from the field, 18 points in the game. And so he only took 11 shots, only went to the free throw line 3 times. And you saw Christian Wood go out there in just 24 minutes. So he played 6 less minutes, took 15 shots, went to the free throw line 10 times. And so you just see from Christian Wood an assertiveness that we don't see from a guy like DeAndre Ayton. Now, maybe it's what the Suns allow Ayton to do and what the Mavs are allowing Christian Wood to do, but I see that as a positive. The Mavs are allowing Christian Wood to do more because he can do more, where I feel like maybe the Suns are holding him back, or maybe that's just part of Ayton's personalities. He's not as assertive as Christian Wood is, but I see that as a very positive thing in game 1 for Wood.
I think that's a great observation. It feels like Christian Wood doesn't need someone to get him the ball, right?
No.
I mean, we saw him. He will get it, right? He will bring it up the court himself. But with Ayton, he is such a different kind of player that he needs somebody to get him the ball. He needs someone to put him in position to score. And I think that, that was just a lot of Phoenix Suns intrigue going into that game. And I I mean, I know we're overreacting after game ones, right? That's what you have to do.
That's what we do.
I felt like that was a season saver for Phoenix.
Wow.
I feel like if they lose and they lose big
again
to Dallas, you might as well just shovel the dirt on them. They were already this close to mentally being checked out on that thing working. That window was going to slam shut for them. They actually pulled that thing together. And the odd thing was, the big elephant in the room was CP3 who was not involved. Monty Williams was bold enough to go there. And, we have one of our analysts this year is Raymond Felton, and he talked about in our pregame, not to turn this into a Suns podcast, but that Devin Booker needs to become the alpha in that fourth quarter. And he did. He absolutely did. And that swung everything, completely in their favor. And I think now they have a completely different outlook on what they might be able to do this season, because it feels different than what they were doing last year. So back to Ayton and the Christian Wood side of that, that's why it feels so positive for Wood, I think, is that he has so much to give, and he does not need anyone else to, create that for him. I just think it's going to be a matter of figuring out their roles, learning each other's games. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
It will. Coming up, let's talk about a couple of changes we want Jason Kidd to maybe make and what Christian Wood can be in the future going forward. Talk about that coming up. All right, Dana, we are here with Dana Larson from Bally Sports with the hot fire take that the Suns saved their season in Game 1. Man, it's probably
coming at you.
It's probably true though. But I thought the point you made about Monty Williams with, I don't know, the gall maybe to play Chris Paul just about 5 minutes in that fourth quarter, to play Damian Lee all 12 minutes, Booker like 8.5 minutes, and then Cameron Payne 6.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like he played 3 guards more than Chris Paul in the fourth quarter, and I think he was right to do it. I mean, they won the game, so I guess that proves it. But Chris Paul was not playing well, and then you look over on the other side, and Jason Kidd plays Christian Wood 24 minutes, despite him playing very well throughout the game. Did you think Christian Wood should have played more? Do you think it was just part of the normal rotation? Was that a mistake on Jason Kidd's part?
I'm not going to second guess any coaches.
That's what we do here. That's what we do on these shows.
I know. I've never been in his shoes. Don't know what that's like, but it just was so dramatic, right? To see how well, I mean, Christian Wood was on a heater, right?
Yeah.
It was 16 straight points, right? A 16-2 run, and it was Wood 16. And it was in fact, I think Mavs fans who might be feeling a little down today should take time to go back and just start the game at the fourth quarter and watch what he did over that stretch, because it was a little bit of everything. It was all those free and easy threes like you were talking about. It was defensive rebounding. It was a post-up shot. There was energy, there was fun around it. And I think that, that was what was so exciting to see, and maybe just replay that and just take that in a little bubble and think about that, because when he came out of the game, everything kind of bogged down and the offense stopped. Phoenix got a run. And so you're just looking at it, tunnel vision like that. It's like, well, why wasn't he still in there? Yeah. Everything was going great. So yes, you would have liked to maybe see him come back in a little sooner. I think he came back in at like the 2-minute mark. And by that point, there was definitely momentum had swung. And so I don't know what that fourth quarter rotation is going to look like, what those minutes are going to look like just yet. It's too early to tell, I think, but boy, next game up, I'd be surprised if it wasn't a close game too against Memphis on Saturday at home. And we'll get a real good look at what they take away from what went down in the fourth quarter in Phoenix.
Yeah. I look at it and I say, okay, you can look at it one of two ways. You can say, well, Jason Kidd should have played Christian Wood more, and this is a disaster. How could they not? This is the thing that we feared. I saw that take a lot on Twitter and in our YouTube comments. Like, what a disaster that the thing we thought would go wrong did go wrong. Or you can look at it like this. he's got so much more to give. Like, they have an answer at least. They at least have an answer. And the Dinwiddie portion of him being in foul trouble affected the game last night a lot more than I think we think. Though I know you didn't want to second guess coaches. Maybe you won't second guess refs, but I thought the refs in this game were just calling so close to the vest, like so many things that I think they could have just let him play. And a couple of those were Dinwiddie fouls, and he gets in foul trouble and then throws off the rotations. And I think it just threw off a lot from the game. And then Jason Kidd was maybe slow to react to some of that. But at least Christian Wood has more to give. At least Dinwiddie will not be in foul trouble every game and have more to give. Tim Hardaway Jr. didn't shoot the ball particularly well. He's coming back from injury. He only played 2 preseason games, so he's got more to give in that sense, rhythm-wise. Like, there are positives to look at this and say, okay, well, they're trending up, and I think that Christian Wood can have a bigger role, even though he was their second leading scorer. Tim Hardaway Jr. can. Dinwiddie can. Like, there's just so much more this team has to give in that.
Don't you think, too, like with Tim Hardaway Jr., I feel like if there had been a little bit more, we saw this last season, when Luka really started moving the ball around and it's hopping and you see the swing and everybody's touching, which means everybody's eating and everybody's in rhythm, right? Tim Hardaway Jr. is a rhythm guy. He's a streak shooter. He needs to see some go in. He needs to touch the ball more often than he was last night. That's going to be, I think, pivotal for them to find a way to make sure that he is fitting in and getting enough touches so that he is in a good rhythm to hit a shot when they need it. Because when he does, then he's going to hit the next 5. That's what kind of streaky, like microwave score you're going to get from Tim Hardaway coming off the bench. But if he hasn't, because we're kind of bogging down a little bit and Luka is feeling the crush to take over and to take full responsibility for things. And I don't think Dorian Finney-Smith or Reggie Bullock took a shot in the fourth quarter at all. Now, I know those are you're leaning into them for defense, but they were huge last year for the 3 and D part of the 3 and D.
For sure.
And for those guys to not to even be taking a shot, it's hard to ask them. I know on there's a lot of looking at the shot that Luka took to try to win the game. And there's Dorian Finney-Smith wide open in the corner. And Luka, took a shot. We've seen him hit it. Was a little tougher shot than the left wing Luka likes, probably. But Dodo hasn't seen the ball all quarter.
Yeah.
That's hard to ask him to do that if you haven't touched the ball, even stroked a shot in how much period of time. So I just think there's going to be better movement to their offense as they go forward. That was, again, back to how we all started this. Phoenix really had that. And the ball they will find a way to get better movement, get more guys involved. And then you're going to have a Tim Hardaway who will really impact a game.
Yeah, the touches for Tim Hardaway is kind of interesting. So not last year, but the year before, where he was shooting really, really well. He averaged 40 touches a game, just about. Last year, he struggled a little bit to shoot. He had 46 touches a game, and last night he got 38 touches. So he's like kind of in that. He was kind of in that range last night, but it's just about getting in rhythm. And yeah, just a couple more touches here and there, and it really isn't a big difference, right? Just to touch the ball a couple more times, but. When the Mavericks had really good ball movement, it stood out last night. And sometimes that's good, and you're like, oh yeah, great ball movement. And then sometimes that's bad. You're like, oh, these plays are so simple. Just an extra swing pass or something else. Like that shouldn't stand out as much as it does last night, and we shouldn't be like celebrating that as much because just because it doesn't happen very often. But
the other thing I'm thinking too is we sort of saw like, you're not exactly dipping your toes into the water in a season opener when you go to Phoenix playing the Suns. And of course, with all the history between these two, they only had those 3 preseason games, the Mavs. And I feel like one of them, none of the main guys even traveled, right? So that didn't even count. There just was such little amount of time to really work through a lot of your things and your rotation and to get comfortable. And so I think maybe they come out of the gates and it's incredible first half and you're like, wow, who needed preseason? But I do think that we saw as the game went on, just probably a lack of time so far and a lack of like real basketball minutes together with this group. And it showed.
Yeah, it did. And now the vibes get tested, right? How good are the Mavericks vibes? Because their vibes all preseason and training camp were great. They were playing DMX at training camp, and guys were super excited. I think one of the big things I saw in training camp was the day that they did that live training camp on the NBA app. Brendan Haywood was there he was one of the announcers there. And Jason Kidd walks by, and Brendan Haywood turns around at Kidd and goes, "When you started playing DMX, I almost took off my warm-up shorts and almost ran in there to try and get back into the game because of how good the vibe was and feeling in that room." And I thought that was just a great example of a former player, former Maverick that came in and said, "Man, you guys got something that I want to be a part of. I wish I could go back to my playing days and be part of this." And I think now that gets tested a little bit with their first test of the season.
Well, that's where you look at guys who have been doing this forever, right? To remind everybody, this is 1/182nd of the season, right? I mean, it is the tiniest fraction. So you can't panic. But I will say that's why Memphis is so important, right? These 3 straight games to open. You've got Phoenix, Memphis, and New Orleans. This is juicy. This is real interesting right out of the gates. And Memphis is tough. You're coming home off a loss. Your building's going to be pumped. You want to get those feels back right away. You don't want to kind of have any sort of 0-2 doesn't feel great, but we're fine. I mean, and 0-2 is fine in the whole scheme of things, but you want to play really well on Saturday in the home opener just to keep that good vibe going. Because you're right, it's been weeks of this excitement. And in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden stuff creeps in, and you want to make sure you push that down as soon as possible.
Oh, I hope so. I hope they put it down on Saturday. The home opener against Memphis, they went and they beat Jalen Brunson and the Knicks in overtime the other day. Memphis is down 3 starters right now, too. Jaren Jackson Jr. was out for them. Dylan Brooks was out for them. And then Zaire Williams was out for them. So we will have a post-game show for you after the game. Dana Larson, you can see her on Bally Sports. Just turn on a Mavs game. Just turn on Bally Sports. She's there. Beginning, pregame, the halftime, and at the end. So go check it out. Anywhere else that people should be checking you out?
Oh, no. That's plenty. That's more than enough.
There you go. Dana, thanks so much for joining us. Guys, thanks for making Locked On Mavs your first listen. Now make your second listen. NBA Game to Game on the Locked On NBA podcast feed on the YouTube channel. It is a recap of every single game from us, the local experts. I'm on there breaking down the Mavs game, and it's a great compilation to get you a great recap of everything that happened in the NBA the night before. So go check that out. Listen to Locked On NBA. I was hosting on Thursday, so go check out that show. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs. Peace out. Boom.